Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, girl, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay, so here we go. I'm turning on my video.
Good. Hi. Oh, you look so beautiful. I just,
You're so sweet.
I just, I was like quickly running around doing all the things, and I never wear pink, and now I'm wearing pink, which makes me feel weird. But we're promoting pink sweatshirts, so I was like, gotta get into it.
No, you're fine. Okay, so I'm gonna go and live stream it.
So, how do you live stream this? Explain to me what you're doing.
So I'm basically just at the bottom. It says more, and it says well, I guess it's already live streaming, but it says like you can live stream Facebook, and so that's basically what I'm doing. Is I'm just going to attempt to do that. Here we go. And it's just like kind of interactive. And so basically what I do is it says go live, and we're now live.
Like, I shouldn't be picking my nose. Just kidding.
Definitely not, Jessica.
I mean, I can pick my nose if I want to. I'm probably just gonna get made a lot of fun.
Probably. And people are probably gonna be like, what was she doing? Did she not know you guys were live?
You know what? These nails here, if you got something stuck up in that nose ring, they are perfect for picking. I'm just saying. Hey, I'm not the first person to pick my nose, and I'm not going to be the last. We all do.
No, definitely not. So, okay. So, yeah, we are live. It is,
I'm Jessica, and I like to pick my nose. I'm kidding, everybody.
it is on there. How have you been?
Oh man, what a freaking whirlwind. It's been gangbusters over here, man. Yeah, it's been gangbusters, but we're good. I had a rough 3 weeks. And I'm like just catching my groove. My husband is out of town for 7-8 days, and we had timed it perfectly. So like my parents are here to have all this extra help. And then my dad drove him to the airport, and they get to the airport and they're like, you failed the inspection. We can't open for another week. So literally my dad, I was like, hey dad, like you on your way home, like Swayze, my little daughter's waiting to have pie with you. He's like, yeah, I'm just on my way home. Dad walks in the door. He's like, I found some stranger to come have pie with us. And then in rocks my husband Ronnie, which we were so grateful for, but now it screws me over this week because I don't have extra help. So bring on the chaos. Like it's like 4 p.m., 3 p.m. having a coffee. You do you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think the last time we did an interview was part of the Valentine's Day one, where Ronnie did the guys last February and you did the girls. And then prior to that, the first interview, which was Life After Loss, was also February 2018. It's crazy. So I'm so excited. I am so excited about your book. I can't wait for people to get to know you. So
thanks.
All my followers, everybody out there, Facebook world. This is Jessica Janzen, Olstad. Amazing, amazing woman. I came across her, I guess it had to have been late 2017, early 2018 through social media. And I interviewed her. She has started a foundation called Love for Lewiston in honor of her little boy, Lewiston, who actually died from, it's SMA, Spinal.
Yep, a rare genetic disease. Yep.
And so she has actually taken that loss and has created a legacy, Lewiston's legacy. And her and her husband and their beautiful children, Swayze and Al Hollis, your kids have the coolest names, are just, basically continuing with this legacy. And so I'm just going to turn it over to you, Jessica. Why don't you tell them about it and what all you do throughout the year to make a difference?
Okay, well, first off, thanks for having me on. My name's Jessica. I sometimes like to pick my nose with my pinky finger. But all kidding aside, I mean, life is short. We've learned that lesson, so you can't take yourself too seriously. And so try to have fun where we can, when we can. But in 2016, I had our second child. So my daughter was 13 months old at the time. I literally remember walking into the hospital and I was like, me again. Hi guys, back a year later. Here we are. I'm like, let's get her done. And I had Olstad. He was healthy, had the softest little cry. The delivery was my easiest. I've now had a total of 3 babies. And so, just so excited, and you bring them home and it's sheer chaos when you have 2 kids that close together. And then we were on vacation in Winnipeg, and probably most people that follow you are from the States, but if you're from Canada, it's just above North Dakota. We like to go to Fargo and Minneapolis. When I was growing up, those were our big hot spots. But we're from this small town, and it's not a place that you go on vacation. Like, it's not like Florida. It's like literally like going to Fargo, North Dakota to go for a vacation. And no offense to any Fargonians, if that's even a word. But anyways, it's like this small little just like farm town. It's not that small, but it's not a place you go to vacation. And so we joke we're on vacation there. And literally my son was really colicky. I was super exhausted, and a friend suggested going to see, let's do it. Get to the chiropractor, and without even, getting anything done, she's like, you need to go into Emerge. I don't like how your son looks and how he's struggling to breathe. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Newborn babies grunt and they make all these weird noises. And long story short, I was like, okay, I'll go to the hospital. My husband had driven home from our vacation. I was staying another week just so I had extra help. And what kind of snowballed from there was just an absolute sheer craziness and insanity of like, the words that I use to describe it are not appropriate, but it was crazy. And so we went to the hospital, and I was just like, hey, like super casual about the whole thing. I had stopped at a store to get a gluten-free sandwich and a hot coffee. Like, I wasn't worried, wasn't panicked. And next thing you know, I'm like calling my husband to fly back to Winnipeg to where we are. And I'm in a resuscitation room, and they're like calling out vital stats and like paging all these people, cardiology, neurology, we need an MRI, a CT, like they're like calling out vitals, like, and I'm like, what is happening? And unfortunately, after 6 days there, we didn't find any answers. We get released from the hospital, fly back to Calgary, eventually our hometown, and go and meet up with the team here. And my son ends up getting admitted, and we find out that he has this rare genetic disease called spinal muscular atrophy. Boom, had no idea. The crazy part about my story is that when I moved here in 2006, so the year after I moved here in 2007, I met this family at my church. And I'm not like, I wasn't big into Sunday school. I volunteered for the youth group and young adults, but they were short. And so that one particular Sunday, I went into this classroom, fell in love with this little boy who also had spinal muscular atrophy, and so did his sister. And I just quit my job in between kind of, transitioning. And so I was able to help this family out. And so I helped this family out for 9 years before I had a son of my own that has this rare genetic disease. And literally right before we went on this Winnipeg vacation, I had just finished fundraising over, I think it's like the exact number is 44,000 and change. So we just finished fundraising money for a wheelchair accessible van. And it was my mission to do this before my son was born and all these things. And literally 3 weeks after we got them their check, my own son receives this rare genetic diagnosis. And unfortunately, I didn't know this at the time, but there's different types. And so my son, Lewiston, had the most severe type. And because he showed and displayed signs so soon, it meant death before the age of 1. And at the time, there was no treatment and no cure, no medication that you could take. Everything was in clinical trials. And so it was just like a waiting game. And so we spent the rest of my son's life basically from diagnosis till the day he passed in the hospital. And then we have a children's hospice here in Calgary, which is a blessing, even though no one wants to be in a children's hospice. But we had this beautiful experience. We gave him a full life as best we could with the circumstances we had. And I knew I had a choice in the whole matter. And I said, regardless of what comes our way, we're going to bring joy. Because I knew if I was in that hospital bed, I wouldn't want someone to have a pity party for me. And I would want to make my life joyful and make the memories count. And so we did that. And unfortunately, he was able to get onto a clinical trial with special access. But by the time we jumped through all the hoops, the deterioration had just been too much on his little body. And I truly feel like God gave me a memo. And I think all of us are like, what is my purpose? Like, what am I meant to do?
Yeah.
And, I literally feel like God like faxes down from heaven, piece of paper. And it was like, you are meant to work in the SMA world. And so when Lewiston would have celebrated his 1-year birthday, which for most people, it's like this big milestone, and you have all the family and you do the cute cake smash and you have the balloons and the ribbon and the bunting. We just decided we would host a birthday party, and that birthed our foundation. And so my life mission is to find a cure for this disease and to bring joy to these families, because people brought joy to us. They loved on us. They helped us stay upright. And so I just want to extend that goodness and grace that I received, that my husband received, our family received, to others. And we were never able to bring our child home. And there's just so many additional costs when you have a child with special needs and what that looks like. And we've now raised over $800,000 in 3 years, which is really cool, especially in Calgary and our economy. It's like a boom and bust town with the oil and gas and all that, but we've just plugged away dollar by dollar. Our goal is to hit $1 million this year, and we've been working on a newborn screening project with my husband leading the charge on that. Don't lose another Lewiston. And we're funding $250,000 of a $500,000 research project with the Children's Hospital here, which we're really excited about. So that's kind of the craziness. And in between, I'm mom, I'm a wifey, I have a small business, I wrote a book, and there's like a bunch of crazy. And yeah, it's a wild ride, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and to everybody, I'm going to be including all the links, if they want to get involved in donating to Love for Lewiston, or just other ways that they'd be able to help. I will include all that, and there'll actually be a blog post that will actually go out a couple days after this. So so tell me about, you've actually been part of, I think this is your second book, or second or third.
Truthfully, I would consider this my first book. So I wrote a chapter in another book, and after I read it, I was like, money to work with, I think, the best editing team. And so I wrote this book called Bring the Joy. And it's just me and my book and my story. And I originally started writing it. If you can hear my son in the background, my office is in a loft. Yeah, it's in a loft. And so there's no door. So you're just like, you know what? This is our life. And I wrote this book, and it was originally about the nudges on my heart to pursue my husband, and how, you can find your true love and all those things. And then obviously the book took a pause. Our lives took a massive shift. And so it's about all the things. It's about career. It's about being single. It's about, working on your marriage. It's about, bringing joy when you're facing a terminal diagnosis. And so I wrote this book, and I would consider this my first, and it was a labor of love. It took me 6 years, and I'm like $90,000 in, because I self-published. There was no HarperCollins that were like, here's our big writing contract. And it's been the coolest and one of the hardest things I've ever done, because it was a grind. I'm not a natural writer, but it's been fun to get it out there. Share
some of you and Ronnie's,
the craziness.
Yeah, because it's an amazing story. It's a very encouraging and hopeful story.
Oh man, it is. I feel like God continues to use all the crazy storms, the shitty storms, to have goodness come together. And that's the truth. So you can see that's one of our wedding photos in the background there. So my husband's nickname is Hot Ronnie, and it's because he's really hot. But he also, the best part about him is not just that he's super hot. It's like, that's the bonus. Tall, dark, and handsome, the sweetest, kindest man. But, he loves Jesus and loves me real good. And so we worked together, and we hated each other. I thought he was a pompous asshole. Pardon my French. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Other people have sworn on this.
I could say a lot worse, so I'll try to keep it somewhat clean. And then he thought I was a stuck-up, bitch, kind of. Unfortunately, we just were so set in our ways, and I was coming in. I was the new hot shot. He had been at the company for a long time, and he's like, no, we've always done it like this. I'm like, yeah, and it sucks, and you can do it better. So we were like this all the time. And we would go and we would open stores. We were both in operations, and then he transitioned out of construction. At one point, I thought he left the operational team so he could avoid me and move into construction. So long story short, we'd worked together for about a year, and we were at the office late one night. He never worked late. He was kind of a 10 till 4. You never saw him at the office. And I'd be the first one there and the last one to leave, because I was all about my career. And one night we were working late. It was a Tuesday. And I was like, why is Ronnie here? This is so weird. This guy never works late. And so I kind of peek out from my little cubby area, and I was like, hey, office. And I was like, you okay? And he's like, no, not really. And this is honestly the most of a conversation that we had ever had, because everything was business. We weren't hey, let's grab a beer after work. We were not those people. And he's like, no, I'm actually not okay. And I was like, oh, like, I thought, of course, most people are like, yeah, I'm great. Everything's good. And he goes into the story about how he got drugged with his girlfriend on Valentine's and he'd been feeling off and, he's really struggling. And so I was like, oh, hey man, like, what helps me in my life when I'm struggling, I go to church. Like, if you ever want to join, feel free to come, like, super casual. So I lobbed off this like soft invite. And like, when you invite someone to church and they're like, yeah, like, thanks, I'll let you know for sure sometime. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then they never come and they avoid you for a good 3 or 4 months. So literally when he was like, yeah, I'm interested, I was like, what? Like, I didn't even know how to respond to that. Because 9 times out of 10, you invite people to church. They're like, no, thanks, I'm good. I'm going to do my own thing over here.
Right.
And so it was super uncomfortable. And this is like one of the reasons why I wrote this book, this exact moment that happened. And it was so uncomfortable. And it's hard for me to sometimes tell the story because I'm like, oh, people are going to think I'm a Jesus freak. And I was like, God's like audible voice, like I can hear it in my head, was like, invite him to the Good Friday service. I don't know. That's just how I think God talks. And so I'm like, oh God, that's so uncomfortable. The hot guy, he already said yes to church. I do not want to ask him twice. I was like, this is going to make me look like a Bible thumper and it's going to be all, and like literally I could just hear God being like with a staff rod or something, being like, ask him to the Friday service. And I was like, oh, like just cringing on the inside. So I like casually, I'm like, hey, like Ron's, if you want to come on like Friday too, I'm going too. And he literally looks at me. He's like, you go to church twice in one weekend? And I was like, well, it is Easter and like the whole thing where Jesus dies and goes to heaven and it's like raised from the dead. And it's like what our whole faith is like based on, this grace thing. The biggest sigh of relief for me where I was like, okay, like the guy's coming to church. And so long story short, he just needed a friend that didn't do drugs and didn't drink their face off. And that was me. I wasn't into drugs. I have a glass of wine, but I wasn't like, let's get hammered every weekend. And that turned into a beautiful friendship. And I fell in love with him hard and fast. He literally has the biggest heart, the most giving and thoughtful person. And I confessed my undying love to him 3 times. And he was like, hey, we're just friends. And I was like, no, I love you. And I'm like, I'm going to marry you. And he's like, no, like we're literally just besties. And, anyways, we're married and we have 3 kids. So clearly it worked out in my favor.
That's amazing. I actually didn't know that part from hearing your story before that. Like you had confessed your love to him 3 times.
Oh, Lord. It was like, hello. Like,
but I knew the part about
that was a conversation.
Yeah. I knew the part about, how you're very influential with kind of leading him to the church. And then just like your relationship just like blossoming and growing in faith and, kind of bringing you guys to where you are. And I'm sure it's probably the faith that's also been able to help you kind of carry you through those really dark and difficult moments.
1000%. And I think the craziest part is like people always ask, like, especially when you lose a child or you have a special needs child, children with a disability, whatever it is, terminal diagnosis, you already like living with someone is hard enough, being married is hard enough. And now you add in a layer of like a terminal kid, death, grief, all of that. Your odds are stacked against you. And I truly believe if it wasn't for our faith and for, rooting ourselves into funding a great church and being with great community, we would have given up on our marriage a long time ago. It's just, it's hard. It's hard when you grieve differently. It's hard when you lose somebody. It's hard with a loss like that for sure.
In like those difficult moments, especially within your marriage, like how did you get through that? I mean, did you kind of have to go off sometimes and like process things on your own? And did Ronnie have to do the same? Or did you, spend a lot more time just comforting each other? Like how, for other couples that might be going through something similar, what kind of feedback could you give them?
I think like the reason why lots of relationships don't work is because we have insane expectations of people, whether it be a friendship or a marriage. And I had insane expectations for Ronnie. And when you're going through grief, you can't place how you grieve. You can't place that expectation on somebody else because it's different for them, and how they process emotion is different, and what looks healthy to them is how they is different. Now, you know, thankfully neither of us threw ourselves into like excessive drinking, doing drugs and partying, you know, like we've pressed into the pain. For me, I would press into like pouring ourselves into our foundation and, you know, spending my time being really busy. And he spent it like really clinging to our daughter and like investing every spare second in her. And that was even an issue for me because I was like, you spend more time with our daughter. And like, you know, I was almost having feelings of jealousy. And I haven't even really talked about that, but yeah, he for sure like just pressed into like, okay, we have this healthy kid. We're going to give her everything we've got. And like that was his whole world, and it felt unhealthy to me. And so I think when you're going through something difficult or you're struggling, whether it be with grief and the loss of a child or just grief of whatever reason that is, I think letting go of your expectations of how you think it should look. Now you're allowed to communicate and you're allowed to, you know, voice your emotions and where you're at and what you need, but you have to be okay that sometimes someone might come to the same conclusion or come to a different point in a different journey. And so I think that really made a difference for us. You know, we invest in therapy. We both held each other accountable to working out and eating healthy. And I think it's like this, all these tiny little habits make such a difference in how you process that. And he knows what I need. I need, you know, connection with my girlfriends. I know I need to work out. And for him, I know he needs my quality time. And so I think it's really understanding people's love languages, how they operate, what fuels their tank, what fuels your tank. And that's then really important for how you get to, and how you grieve together, but separately.
Last year was kind of a big year because after losing Lewiston, you actually then welcomed your third child, Hollis.
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
Hollis is actually named after Lewiston, Hollis Lewiston.
Yeah.
So what has that dynamic been like, you know, for you guys and for Swayze and, you know, having another little baby to love on? And, you know, has it been difficult with, you know, have you thought about Lewiston? I mean, I'm sure you probably have.
Yeah, we didn't find out the sex of the baby, so we decided to leave it a surprise. So my daughter, we left a surprise, found out when we had her that it was a girl, because we got so pregnant quickly after. I was like, I need to know if like we're buying, you know, boy clothes on sale or if we can just wash, rinse, and repeat the same clothes. And so we found out, and it was a little baby boy, which my husband was so excited about to like, you know, do the football and the sports things together. And he still does that with our daughter. He's so good about being inclusive, not just about boy stuff and girl stuff, but you know, there's a father-son bond, and he had a really cool relationship, and he's unfortunately lost two dads. And so, you know, being a dad and having, you know, a son and being able to pour into was so important to him. And so we decided for this third baby that we would find out if the baby was healthy or not. And the baby didn't have SMA. Our third son is a carrier. So he's healthy. He's, you know, doing all the normal things. But we decided not to find out the sex of the baby. We had a few friends that wanted to know, and we let them know because they were working on a special project for us. And I remember I convinced myself that it was a girl, even though I had like dreams it was a boy and like had this gut feeling that it was a boy. And I convinced myself it was a girl. So when Hollis came out, I'm like, what is it? And they're like, look down. I'm like, oh my gosh, it has balls. That's what I screamed out. Like that was the very first thing out of my mouth. I was like, it has balls. Not even it's a boy. I say it has balls. I just remember being like, what? And Ronnie was so excited. And, you know, it's hard in moments where like now you step back and you see your kids and you see your kids, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what it would be like for a dynamic of three. Or I wonder how Swayze and Lewiston, or I wonder what it would be like between Lewiston and Hollis. Or I think you replay those questions, and I just allow myself to let my head wander and picture it and process it. And, you know, we wanted 4 kids. I'm turning 36 this year. If we get pregnant or when we get pregnant again, you know, that would be our 3rd child that lives with us, but it would be my 4th child. But we wanted a family of 4, and that means 4 living children with you. And so it just like you go through all these emotions of like, oh, I'm gonna almost be 40 by the time we have all the kids, or, you know, you just play those scenarios. And so I think I go through it all, and I just try to healthily process it. And if I'm really struggling with something, I honestly will call my therapist and be like, hey, this is where I'm in a really yucky headspace, or like, oh, I'm mad about this. And I do get mad. I get mad that I'm like, oh, I don't know what it is, is like to have 3 kids running around, or, oh, there should be another little boy in here, you know, bruising up Hollis. And I have those moments. I just make sure I don't stay like in the pity party long, but I do allow myself to have them. And then you just move on, and I count my blessings that I do have, because I do have 2 healthy children that are a total handful and super hilarious and fun. So.
Did Hollis already have his first birthday?
He just did in April. It was COVID, and like we honestly, I was like, here's a cake. I hung up a banner that my girlfriend. I don't even think I did balloons. Like, I'm just not the Pinterest mom. Someone sent me a package, and I was like, girlfriend, this is more work, and I don't got time for that. And it's their first birthday. Don't really remember it, but yeah.
I'm sure it was somewhat bittersweet, just because it was a moment, a milestone you weren't able to share with Lewiston. But just probably being so grateful that you were able to share that with Hollis.
Well, my one girlfriend, it's funny that you bring that up. She brought up, so Lewiston lived 179 days. We're working on a documentary called 179. And when Hollis hit 179 days, I was with my girlfriend, Jody, and Jody's like, girls, she's like, do you know what today is? I was like, no. She's like, Hollis is 179 days old. She's like, Lewiston didn't get. And that actually kind of hit me more. So like when he turned 6 months, it was like, oh, like I didn't get this time with my son. And I'm now getting it with my 3rd baby, and what a blessing it is, you know, all of those little milestones of like, and you're just so thankful as a parent when you're told your child will never walk, you know, never crawl, you know, all these things. So when your child does hit all these milestones, you're like, yes. So it's been kind of fun that way.
What is your hope for your book? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish through your book?
Casually, New York Times bestseller, but apparently you can't do that if you're self-published. So if anyone here is connected to a publishing house and wants to pick up my book, it is a really great read, though. I've gotten just amazing feedback. I mean, here's the thing. Yeah, I dream really big, and it's like, of course I'd want to be a New York Times bestselling author and sell, you know, 1 million, 5 million copies.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. And being real. But I wrote the book to help people get unstuck. I wrote the book so I think we're so often obsessed with like, I'm trying to get here, and like we forget about the journey and getting there and like enjoying that process, as well as, you know, I think I struggled with joy and mental health and all of those things. And I wanted to write a book that was like, look at, here's all the dumb stuff I did. Here's all the awesome stuff I did. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Here's where, you know, those lessons learned. I mean, how many times do you go read a book and you're like, oh, right? Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to write a book. Like there's literally a chapter in here, and it's called Leave the Chili at Home. And I literally wrote this in here, and it's like a step-by-step thing. It's like, here's the short list of things that helped me. And I just gave suggestions of how you could walk alongside a family in grief or in loss or with a terminal diagnosis. And then it was like things not to do, you know what I mean? And I just gave very practical advice. And so that's one of, you know, many chapters in there. But I just want the book to inspire people to like rise up and go live the life that they were meant and created to be. And I'm fortunate. I have a parents who are like, you can do anything. I've always been told that. But I think that there's unfortunately a lot of people that haven't been told that. And so maybe I'm the one that's saying like, you've got the power, you've got the courage, and you're brave enough, and you were designed to do this. Like rise up and go do the hard things and chase after and go after and start living your dream. And so that's what I truly hope, is that people are just inspired to do more and be more and go for it.
I'm glad that you mentioned that chapter, because for anybody that might be out there thinking, what should I say? What shouldn't I say? Like how to walk alongside someone. I mean, it's in your book. So I think that's good for people to know, to be like,
and
oh,
it's
that's
like
a resource.
Totally. And it's like, not everything is going to be right. Every person is different. I'm a super open, honest, like welcoming person. I know people that like their kids have passed and they haven't like opened up their blinds and didn't let people over for 6 months. Like everyone is going to go through this, but I'm like, here's what worked and here's what didn't, you know, take it or leave it. And I think apply it, you know, practically to whatever situation you've got. But the hope is that it helps people like think outside the box. Because I had expectations of how my friends should show up and grieve alongside me. And then when they didn't do it the way I thought they should, I really had a hard time with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are your long-term goals for Love for Lewiston?
So for the foundation, like I said, honestly, we'd love to be part of finding a cure. This newborn screening pilot project is still not fully in effect. So we're working through where the testing gets done now turned into a COVID testing lab. So of course, this is a project, so it's backlogged and not priority. But it's to get not only just provincial newborn screening, but to get newborn screening done for across Canada. It's starting to trickle down in the state, so we'd love to see that. And then just love to see families continue to get uplifted and supported so that they don't feel like they're alone in that. And then like honestly being part of a cure, being part of research so that these kids are so sharp and beautiful and bright, and they have such incredible futures. It's just that their bodies aren't functioning, and it's just like this one genetic gene that's like a deletion copy, and so they're just missing this thing to switch on in their brains. And so they're really close to a cure and some really incredible treatments. And kids that are now getting treatment, at birth are like walking, running, like doing all the things that they weren't supposed to. So I'd love to see a day when SMA isn't even a thing.
What is some ways for people to support or get involved with the foundation?
So involved, obviously the easiest way is to make a financial donation. And on our website, what's really cool right now is we have 8 needs that we had people come in and apply and say, hey, like I need a wheelchair accessible vehicle. Hey, I need a wheelchair that I can leave at my son's school so that he can get to and from. He has SMA type 3, so he can kind of walk, but not really. And he doesn't have the strength to bring his wheelchair home and carry it onto the bus. So like little things like that. And so the most practical way is a financial contribution. Which, you can allocate it right now on our website. And we're really proud of how we've partnered and who we've partnered and how we're helping in the community. Secondly is following us on Instagram and telling people about our organization and what we're doing and just spreading the word. I think raising awareness so that this is more of not so rare would be a massive blessing. And then obviously attending our events and, liking what we're doing on social media. There's just so much power. And I know even as a small business owner, sometimes you're not in a position to financially help, but there's other things that you can do. We have a partner who does cards for us. So if you're looking at buying greeting cards, buy these greeting cards. They have the Lewiston heart on them. Proceeds go back towards the foundation. We have a clothing line. So we do a portion of proceeds from this clothing line. It's called the Lewiston label. That's a fun and tangible way where you can like rep something. And people, this heart always sparks conversation. So what does that look like? $2.50 from every one of my books sold moving forward goes back towards the foundation. So there's like a ton of ways that you can help and get involved. I think it's just like where you're nudged to. I talk about these nudges in my book. Like that's the best way to come alongside of us. And it'll look different for you in different seasons because there's a million things going on, a million different causes. But I think when you feel nudged to do something, then respond to that nudge.
What's the best way for people to go about getting your book? Is it through the foundation?
It's through Amazon, man, if I'm being honest. We have a website called the Lewiston Label. That's where all of our clothing, it is separate from the foundation. We run it as a business. It's not a not-for-profit. It is a for-profit business trying to pay our mortgage and spread Lewiston's love. And you can buy it on our website. But if you're in the States, Amazon Prime that book to your house. We'd love, Barnes & Noble also is carrying it on their website. And there's a ton of like local retailers here in Calgary and my hometown, and we're trying to get more on board. But hashtag COVID times, everything's a little bit crazy. So,
yeah. And all of these, links and websites will be, attached to this interview so that it's easy.
Because you're so organized.
I try to be, but
you
also
are.
Just so that people can, connect with you if they want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you have coming up or like in the works?
Okay, I wish I had something so exciting and I was like, guys, this is what's coming. I am in a season of just being present and fixing all the crazy. And that's really hard. So the most exciting project that will come out in fall that is tied into our foundation and Lewiston's story is our documentary. I'm one of the producers, but South Base Creative is taking the lead on it. And like they're doing all the crazy editing and videoing and all of that. And my goal was just to be able to share, the story of SMA and encourage people to move their bodies and just be thankful for what they have. So that's like the biggest project. Normally I'm like, I'm writing a book or I'm starting a podcast, which I want to do. But I'm in this season where when Hollis was born, I took a 10-day maternity leave and had to go back to, working. I do a ton of influencer stuff, which is such a blessing. It gives me the freedom and flexibility to be able to run the foundation and speak and do all the things that I love. But someone that like loves new and shiny and exciting and next thing. But I run at a really insane pace, and I'm just trying to get every kind of screw tightened and nut and bolt working so that it's seamless of how we go about executing on all the things. And we've got our events that we were supposed to have in the springtime obviously got bumped because of COVID. And so now they're happening in kind of the back half of the year. So just organizing that. So I don't have any like crazy new news. My personal website looks like a hot dumpster fire. So like there's stuff to do, but besides the documentary, I'm just like head down, paying our bills and trying to get this book and hopefully picked up. I have started my next little book, but I'm also like, focus on what's in front of you, clean up the messes that you've created before you start the next thing. So that's where I'm at.
What else would you want the viewers to know, or what would you like them to be their takeaway, the message from this interview?
Our foundation covers three things, and for me personally, I'll tie this back into it. But our foundation is about three things, and I remember this moment when we were trying to define things and what life looked like and what this foundation was like. I didn't ever set out to be like, I'm going to have this foundation and this, charity and blah, blah, blah. It's been way more work than we ever anticipated. It's been hard. It's put me in tears, and you're just like, ah. Yeah. But I remember this defining moment when it was like, choose movement, bring joy, spread love. And it's like, that message will resonate with anybody at any time. And so the byproduct of what we do and how we go about doing it is impacting the SMA community and helping the warriors and the families that are fighting for their lives and for their kids' lives. We get to like impact them and play a part in that. But overall, like, I know my life's purpose and my mission is to bring light to those that have been in darkness, because that's where I was. I was in the darkness. I attempted suicide. And when I was in high school, I've struggled with mental health, where I literally would like close out all of the blinds and stay under the covers, and, I'd be sick, but I think I had just stressed out my body so much that I was hiding from certain areas of my life. And I truly want to just be a beacon of hope for people, where it's like, okay, y'all, if I can lose my son and I can be upright and in a loving and an incredible marriage, it's possible for you too. If I've like gone through the ups and downs of career and what I thought I was going to be to where I am now, which I'm still defining and figuring out, you can do anything and be anything too. And so I just want to inspire people to use what they have where they are. And to know that anything is possible. It's possible to raise $1 million in your son's name. It's possible to have the best job. It's possible to have an incredible marriage. All of this takes work. There's seasons of life. There's ebbs and flows. I don't believe in balance, because you tell me when your life has ever just been like all like this all the time. I feel like there's like moments like this, but like, come on, it's like trying to have your life like a teeter-totter, man. Like, that's just exhausting to have it like this all the time. And so just like pressing into the seasons. And I truly believe that if people would honestly follow the nudges on your heart, and for me, I attribute them to God, the Holy Spirit. I hear that audible voice often. For other people, it might be the universe, or your great aunt Selma, or Buddha, or, whoever it is, your mom, like, whatever those nudges are, you want to attribute them to. But when you start listening and responding to those, that's where I believe you start to get momentum. And I believe that that's where the joy, the true, deep joy that people want and crave, that's where it comes. Because those are the whispers saying, hey, this is where you're meant to be. Hey, this is where you're meant to play. Hey, this is where you're meant to be a part of, or that's going to be one of your girlfriends. Like, my bestest of best friends, I was nudged to buy her a cup of coffee, and it felt a little bit uncomfortable. She was a client that used to take my spin class. And because I followed through on that nudge and bought her a cup of coffee, like, I have one of the most incredible best friends a girl could ask for. And so it's like, trust those nudges, because that's where the real goodness comes.
Well, Jessica, your family and you are such an inspiration, and Lewiston's legacy is definitely making a difference Thank you so much for being on here.
Yeah.
It's so fun to actually like connect with you.
I know, like, I feel like we've had lots of phone conversations, but now you're like, oh, I just want to reach the screen and hug you.
Oh, you're so sweet. I know, it's like, oh, you're like, we're real.
Here I am. I showered today. Yeah.
But it's so fun to actually kind of have more face-to-face and just connecting with you again. I just love your family. And, you know, to all the viewers out there, I just want to encourage you to live each day with purpose and strive to make a difference one day, one life at a time. And until next time, again, Jessica, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.